Okay, welcome again, everyone. So, little introduction, some beginning reflections. So, when we Dominicans moved in to take over the spiritual care of the parish in 2018, we inherited a beautiful parish, beautiful people, a rich spiritual heritage, and a majestic church. But there were millions of dollars of repairs and renovations that the church needed. The boiler for the upper church died, I believe, in 2010. The boiler in the lower church died in 2020. A whole new system was needed. As you know, there are no restrooms in the church and no accessibility. Many of the stained glass windows were and still are bowing. And shortly after we discovered that the church was in need of a new roof and wall repairs. So an assessment of the building and actually of all our buildings revealed many needed repairs, from things that were urgent and high priority to medium and low priority. And this is all in addition to many more minor repairs. Well, Father George first, and then I afterwards, slowly went about making minor repairs. We started trying to figure out how to tackle the big problems. As Dominicans and priests, our focus, of course, is on preaching, evangelization, serving the spiritual needs of our parishioners. It was overwhelming to think about all of these projects. And so two temptations arose. The first was to ignore the needs and focus on the spiritual aspects of the mission, but that would be to kick the can down the road with the problems building. The other temptation would be to dive so fully into the work that the spiritual focus would be lost or made secondary. We tried our best to avoid these two extremes. We have sought to prioritize the spiritual mission of the parish and to see the repairs and renovations as part of this larger mission. So we called our campaign Magnifying Christ's Light. As many of you know, all the needs were too much to tackle at once, so we decided to take on one at a time, beginning with the roof and walls. This was the most pressing. As you know, without a sound roof and walls, anything we would do interiorly would be compromised and at risk. The roof and walls are so significant for our church, not only because they protect the people and interior of the church, but also because they are a symbol of heaven, our ultimate destination. And when you're in the church, of course, and you look up at these grand vaults, it makes you think of the majesty of God and of heaven. They also complete and unify the whole building. So I'm so thankful to all who responded so generously and made it possible for this very significant work to be done. It was a team effort. Without everyone pitching in according to their ability, this would not have been possible. The presentation tonight will highlight the work that was done. It is a celebration ultimately of God's favor to us and our parish and of what was done through the love, generosity, and sacrifices of the parishioners and friends of St. Patrick's. Now I will hand it over to our OR, our owner's representative, Darryl Podunavac, who he has been a godsend to us, and he will help us appreciate significant work that was accomplished. And so, without further ado, Darryl Podunavac.
Thank you so much, Father. Are we able to see that currently on the screen, everybody? No.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, no.
Okay, how about that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And you're able to see that?
Yes.
Everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure how the PowerPoint would work here, so I apologize for fiddling a little bit. And then we also have there's a couple of video parts to the presentation, so hopefully those will go as well. Okay, well, thank you so much, Father. I do appreciate that. Again, my name is Darryl Podunavac, and I began working with the parish and Father Hyacinth probably about 3 years ago during the discernment period that Father spoke of. He mentioned a lot of things that were looked at, a lot of needs in the church, and we studied everything very carefully. It was probably over a year it took to kind of really figure out what the needs were, how much they would cost, and ultimately to decide that this was an important aspect of the project, making sure that you had a tight roof and that the walls were secure. And I'm reminded of Scripture, how lovely is thy dwelling place. And Father says it well. The church building is not just a place where you come and you gather worship, but it really is our little place, our little sanctuary, which is a little bit of a taste of heaven. So it's an important building. My patron is Saint Joseph. And I remember when I was a young man, 13 or 14 years old, and I was confirmed, I chose the name Joseph. And I wasn't sure quite why, the reason that I chose Joseph as my patron. And it wasn't until many years later that I really discovered why. I'm a cradle Catholic, and I have a great love for the church, but my background is in architecture and engineering. And for the last 25 years or so, really my focus has been on working for the church. And so it was truly an honor and a privilege for me to help you with this project, to see it from its inception all the way through its completion, which we had called the Roof and Walls Project. It wasn't something that was entered into lightly. It was studied, as I said, rather seriously from an academic standpoint, if you will, and from a professional standpoint. So we decided that we needed to put together a team that would be appropriate to embark on a project like this so that it would last a very long time. And so there you can see was a team that was selected. I'm your owner's representative, Luxmundi LLC. There was an architect / engineer involved, JVCI. There was a structural consultant because we had to look at what was going on under the roof to really understand and appreciate what we were going to go and what we were attempting to do on top of the roof. So that would be Keystone Hood. And those firms are both based in Philadelphia. And our general contractor was Turner Construction, one of the largest, not only in the city, but in the United States and even in the world. It was a great team. And I was happy to be a part of the team along with you, the owner. The building is 110 years old, and it has withstood the test of time fairly well. So this is an early shot of the building before any of the work began. And you could almost argue that it looks like it's in pretty good shape. And it was in pretty good shape until you look at it a little bit closer. But effectively, the building is it's a masonry building. It's an all stone building. The structure, as well as what you see on the outside, which is face brick and cast stone. The windows are framed in steel, and they're stained glass windows with a protective coating on the outside, or a protective layer of opaque glass on the outside. And you also have some wood windows above in the arched areas all along the building and the transept and along the nave. So there's a shot of, again, some of the outside of the building before the work began. And it was an early determination that the work would require some tuck pointing and some replacement of the actual brick and stone and repair of the wood elements. Now, when you get up a little bit closer, and this was taken as the scaffold was erected, and you can see what was really going on. And it's very difficult to see the building this good. It's not necessarily under a microscope, but this is just from a couple of feet away. You can see the condition of some of the stone. The cast stone and the cut stone had large cracks in them. There were whole sections that just came out and that were decaying underneath it. On the right side, you can see a downspout. The original gutter and downspout system was in the interior of the church, and so those beautiful pilasters on the inside had cast iron conductors of rainwater that came down, but eventually they corroded and rusted over time and began leaking into the inside of the church. So at certain points, at a certain point in time, the idea was to take all of the water and put it on the outside. But as you can see there on the right side, it wasn't. It was done almost on an emergency basis, and so it was decided that it would be a good idea to really kind of rethink the whole rain leader system to make sure that this time it would be done and be a little bit more sensitive to what was going on to the stone and the masonry on the outside. There you can see on the left side is one of the many cracks in the facade of the church, which had been repointed over time but was already failing. You can see there up close what those wooden framed stained glass windows above the main stained glass in the arches looked like And it wasn't just peeling paint. The bottom there shows you that the wood itself had really begun to deteriorate and would have to be replaced. And then on the roof, the original drawing showed a tile roof, which it wasn't very clear what that meant and what the tile roof was, but it was very apparent that the roof had been roofed over multiple times, to the point where you can see just the layers going into the existing gutter, perhaps constricting it a bit. When eventually that roof was taken off, those layers of roof were taken off, and the coatings that were on there, you could see that some of the downspout on the right side became exposed, and that perhaps was one of the rain leaders that was leading into the interior of the church that was now abandoned. But that area above there really had to be corrected so that the rain would properly be shed from the roof. So the engineers, again, it wasn't just something that was a guess at it. They looked at almost every crack and void on the roof, and then came up with a program of how to repair it. So the drawings on the left show the various elevations of the church, and every area had a note on it which gave an instruction to the general contractor and his subcontractors on specifically how to rake out the joints and repair it. On the right side, the lower right, you can see that on the middle section there, where not only was the crack replaced, but some of the brick itself was pulled out and new brick was put in. The masonry that was replaced and the mortar were reviewed with the Philadelphia Historical Commission to make sure that everything that was done on the church would really be representative of what was there originally. On the upper right drawing, you can see basically the entire internal gutter system was rebuilt, reconstructed out of exterior grade wood, and then lined appropriately before a new gutter system was installed. Then we had to find access to the building. You can see there, those are actually engineer drawings from the scaffolding subcontractor to Turner Superior Scaffolding, which also had to be permitted. So all of the work on the building, whether it was the roof or what was done on the exterior of the walls, was all permitted with the city. And in fact, we just received the final inspection from the city that says that everything was installed according to the plans. But one of the reasons why the project took over 2 years was, again, everything had to be thought out and planned carefully, down to protecting the pedestrians and the people coming and going inside and out of the church. And I'm sure we're all going in and out of the lower church, and you recall the scaffolding that was there which is now gone. The project schedule began and was intended to be completed by fall of last year. And it ended up going over till just very recently. You've seen the scaffold come down this spring, and there's still a couple of what we would call punch list items that are going to be taken care of on the church. But it went on for quite a bit of time beyond what was originally anticipated. And why was that? It was because there were a lot of things that you discover in a 110-year-old building, even though you can look at it from the outside, again, until the scaffolding is up there and you really take a close look at it, you don't really understand what is there. And so the project was on, but it was managed well by our general contractor. So what were some of those issues that we ran into on any old building? One of the principal issues that you see are hidden conditions, and there was a drone that was flown all around the outside of the building to come up with those drawings that you saw earlier. There were literally multiple, probably over a dozen core samples drilled into the roof to see exactly what was going on. But even with all of that, until you actually get in there and begin looking at the work and looking up close, there's things that you don't know. And this happens on any existing building, especially one that is over 100 years old. And there are many different types of issues, and some of them you really just can't anticipate. One of the sum total of all the issues add to the challenge and the interest of interesting nature of completing a project like this. So, but one of the things that was run into that would have never been anticipated was there was a colony of bees way up in the top of the church. And it wasn't just a hornet's nest or a wasp's nest. There were literally thousands of bees up there. And this is I was hoping that there you go. You could just kind of get a feel for how many bees were there. And they weren't just exterminated, they were professionally removed and relocated to another area. But you wouldn't imagine that in a downtown urban area like that, there were that many bees, because the bees require flowers to pollinate, but you just have Rittenhouse Square a few blocks away. And so they had made their home up there. And we don't know how long, but there were just enough bees that it really required a major endeavor to have them all relocated. When you're working on the outside of the building, you always run into weather. When it can rain, and depending on what's going on with the rain, sometimes the workers can continue, sometimes they're not able to continue, and so we had a number of rain events, and then we even had some snow events. Even though it didn't seem like a very wintry weather this year in Philadelphia, it did impact the building, because when the snow started melting, it creates an icy, unsafe condition on the scaffolding. And so as long as that condition persisted, we had to stop work in the wintertime. One of the most interesting conditions I found as a student of engineering and architecture was the type of structure that was on the building. When you look up into the ceiling and those beautiful groin vaults, when you're in the nave of the church, you see what is known as Guastavino tile. The Guastavino tile is literally a structural system. It's not done anymore. It seems antiquated in its technology, but the reality is it is a very modern version of technology from an antiquated method of building in arches and domes. And so when you look to ancient Rome, all of the Romanesque style buildings, and this is a building that is sort of a postmodern, or not a postmodern, but a Romanesque revival church. It is built in the same fashion, where you literally have structural tile, which is holding up all of those arches that you look at when you're in the nave of the church, and even the structure up above it. But how does that all work together? We had to really discover once we got into some of the details. There you can see on the original drawings of the church where it says tile roof. When you imagine what a tile roof could be, I think of a sort of a barrel tile like we have here in Florida, which is lining the roof. And we thought, well, maybe they had that on the church at one time, and perhaps they didn't build it. You can see the cupola there, which is made out of terracotta, was never built on the church the way it is designed there. It's a much lower cupola that was put on the church. But when you get into the building and you look up underneath, all of those arches that you see there, the inner shells, the inner arches, and the upper structure of the church, it's all made out of thin layers of tile. In modern buildings, everything is made out of steel, or in the case of the beautiful Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, there's literally heavy wood timber. So at this point in time, the technology allowed to have these Guastavino and terracotta stone arches. But how did that? And then you can see the design of the cupola there up on the roof of the church, which was never built the way it was designed over there. So what happens when you take the layers of the roof that were on top of the tile? We discovered that there literally was a flat layer of tile that was the original roof coating. And I think that I've never seen it before in my career. When we started getting into this, we did a lot of research, and in one of the books we saw a version of this. So it was rarely done. But your church happened to be one of the candidates that actually had a tile roof that was It was not a lap joint tile. It was just they were laid flat into a setting bed of mortar on the roof. My guess is that not long after that roof was installed, it almost immediately started leaking. So if you look, and this is in the attic of your church, you can see the sort of white chalky material on the underside of the roof. In the middle picture is the actual apse of the church, the apse wall. You can also see that chalky material there. And what had happened was the roof, when it was leaking, the moisture came through almost immediately and started bleaching out this product, which we call efflorescence, into the roof. And so there was extensive water, coming in, and eventually they began re-roofing the tile with layers of bituminous sheet roofing. There were several layers of that, but in any event, even that roofing eventually is going to wear out over time. There's just another view. It's such a fascinating structure. A lot of us had an opportunity to go up there to look at it, but if you look at the lower right corner, that's a beam that goes across there, but which is actually really an arched beam, because it is as a structural engineer would say, it's in compression. It's not in tension. Normally, the bottom of a beam is in tension. So the entire structure is held together by the mass of these laminated layers of terracotta tile. It took, and this is why our engineer had to review it. We had to look at some of the sort of hairline cracks that were up there to make sure that there were no issues with that, and then to really find the right way to remove the original tile that was on the roof, and to find an adequate way to adhere the new roofing below. So you can see there, on the left side, you can actually see the original roof tiles that were laid flat on the roof, and you can see, if you can see my little pointer here, those are the original mortar joints that would have been exposed to the weather. That eventually deteriorated over time. There was no way that a new roof could be adhered to that. So the only solution was to take that tile off, and that's exactly what they did. And here you can see how easy it came off. I mean, it just literally was scraped off of the roof down to the layer of the original structure underneath it. The contractor estimated that about 75 tons of tile were taken off of the roof. So in the future, if you ever wanted to put on a tile roof that had, a barrel configuration or slate roof, you would have enough. The roof would be structurally sound enough to hold all of that. But in any event, the roof was replaced with what had been on there when they did the subsequent years of re-roofing. Okay, let's take a look at the restoration work completed now on the roof. So there you can see on the left side, you basically had a 3-layer system that was put on top of that the underlayment of terracotta tile. There was a mechanically fastened piece of underlayment, and then on top of that there was a base sheet, and then on top of that there was what we call a cap sheet. And it was the system is known as a torch down system. So if you look here, literally he's torching down the base sheet on top of the underlayment, which is mechanically fastened. These are the mechanical fasteners, right, on the little round circles, and then they torch down that layer, and then on top of that they torch down a top layer of a similar. It's called a modifying bitumen roof, and it has impregnated in it stone, so it's almost like a shingled roof. It's a 3-layer system. Okay. Now we got up close to the wood windows in the arched areas, and you can see the restoration work that was done there. They were painted, recaulked, and then the rotted wood was replaced, so they're like brand new at this point. On the left side there, you can see an example of some replaced brick. It's a slightly different color. And then also the areas that were repointed. So that was an example of many, many areas that were where the bricks were replaced and repointed. And then on the right side, you can see where the new internal gutter was formed and built, replacing in the same area the original gutter, but now not having any of the downspouts. There was rather scuppers that were allowing the rain to go into rain leaders on the outside of the church. And this is what it would look like. Some of the replaced stonework effort was cleaned and repointed and repainted. Some of the ornamental figures up at the cornice area of the roof. Almost a keystone in that one arched area there that had to be completely replaced. And there's a joint that was repointed below that. It was decided to use the same material that was originally there, that would be copper, so that this would last pretty much forever, or at least another 110 years. So the copper came out in long sheets and had to be welded together so it effectively becomes seamless. And then on the left side, you can see a roof scupper that was never there before, but was added so that it would be connected to a downspout, so you would have that proper shedding of the rainwater off of the roof. But all of this work was done by hand, and it took a long time to do it. And again, this was done toward the end of winter, like in February-ish. And so there were days that they couldn't work on it, but for the most part, they got it done, and they did a beautiful job. And it's a shame that you can't just walk up and see it. It's kind of hidden there, except for these pictures, but it'll last forever. And so now we see the completed church with the scaffolding taken down on the left side. There was some cleaning done to the church in addition to the repointing. On the right side, it becomes, on the right photograph, it's a little bit more apparent where the area was cleaned and repointed. And those are your new doors. If you recall, the original doors there had, again, due to time, it eventually deteriorated. But those doors in the middle will last another 100 years. That was another very interesting restoration project. People often think that today we don't have trades that can do this type of work, but if you look at those, the ornamental sort of rivets on the door there, we had to ship those out to basically a blacksmith that knew how to do that, and then ship them back to the mill workshop that reinstalled them on the door. When you look at something like that and the copper work on the roof, it's like, yes, you still can do things in hand if needs be, and so the quality can still be there and restored just as it was 110 years ago. And then there's another view of the church. It's just a magnificent edifice on the left side, complete, and then on the left photograph, and then on the right side, which is the Rittenhouse Square Street photograph of the completed restoration work with the downspouts now that go all the way down into the ground, keeping the water off of the sidewalk and into the storm sewers, which surround the entire perimeter of the church. Now I'm going to show you a video that we put together. This was a video that was based on photographs that were edited and taken by two of the parishioners there, John Adams and Jonathan Smith. They were at the live presentation, but to their credit, they painstakingly took a photograph every month from a vantage point high above the church, and you can kind of see what the process looks like. It's hard to imagine the amount of work that it takes to do it. This just gives us a little bit of a glimpse of what it took to take the roof off, to put the scaffolding up, and then to install the new roof over almost a 1-year period. So I'm going to show you that video right now, and hopefully it'll work good. So here we go. And that is our project. And I guess at this point, Father, if you want to, we can entertain any questions if everybody is okay with that.